Week 8, Identity Compression. When your true self had to become smaller to survive. Welcome back to Understanding Covert Abuse Through the Body. This is week 8, and this week we are naming something many survivors carry without realizing how deeply it shaped them. Identity compression, the shrinking of the self, the flattening of the person, the quieting of desire, the dimming of gifts, the narrowing of expression, the collapse of personality, voice, appetite, preference, creativity, anger, joy, grief, and truth into a version of the self that felt safer for the system to tolerate. Identity compression is what happens when being fully yourself is not safe. Not because your self was wrong, not because your gifts were too much, not because your personality was dangerous. Not because your desires were selfish, not because your voice was rebellious, but because the system around you could not tolerate your fullness without trying to manage it, use it, shame it, silence it, spiritualize it, or make it serve the system. So your body learned to compress, to become smaller, to become easier, to become less noticeable, to become more useful, to become less alive in the places that drew attention, to become less honest in the places that created consequences, to become less radiant where radiance made you vulnerable, to become less true where truth threatened the room. And for many survivors, this compression happened so early and so gradually that it did not feel like a choice. It felt like becoming. You may have thought, this is just who I am. I am quiet. I am easygoing. I do not need much. I do not have strong preferences. I do not know what I want. I do not like attention. I am low maintenance. I am mature. I am adaptable. I am spiritual. I am selfless. I am fine. But sometimes what looked like personality was actually adaptation. Sometimes what looked like humility was actually compression. Sometimes what looked like flexibility was actually the absence of safe choice. Sometimes what looked like peacekeeping was actually the loss of access to your own truth. Sometimes what looked like being good was actually becoming small enough that the system did not have to deal with your full personhood. And if that is true for you, I want to say this gently. You are not weak. You are not empty. You are not without identity. You are not behind. You are not too late. Your true self was not destroyed. It may have been hidden. It may have been collapsed. It may have been buried under roles. It may have been forced into usefulness. It may have been covered by survival. But Jesus knows the self beneath the compression, and he is not confused by what captivity required you to become. What identity compression feels like. Identity compression can feel like not knowing who you are unless someone else needs you. It can feel like becoming whatever the room requires. Calm if the room needs calm. Cheerful if the room needs lightness. Quiet if the room needs silence. Helpful if the room needs labor. Spiritual if the room needs performance. Invisible if the room needs no disruption. Wise if the room needs counsel. Small if the room cannot tolerate your size. It can feel like losing track of where you end and the role begins. You may know how to be the responsible one, the sensitive one, the helper, the interpreter, the peacekeeper, the gifted one, the strong one, the easy child, the spiritual one, the one who understands, the one who can take it, the one who does not need much, the one who will not make things harder. But when the role goes quiet, you may not know what remains. You may ask, what do I actually like? What do I want? What do I feel? What could I choose if no one needed me to choose around them? What would my voice sound like if I were not managing impact? What would my face do if it were not being watched? What would my body want if it were not bracing? What would my life look like if I were not organized around survival? These are not small questions. They are resurrection questions. Because identity compression does not only hide preference, it hides aliveness, it hides agency, it hides desire, it hides anger, it hides delight, it hides the God-given shape of the person. And when that begins to return, it can feel both beautiful and frightening. Because for the survivor, fullness may not have felt safe. Being visible may have meant being used. Being gifted may have meant being harvested. Being honest may have meant being punished. Being joyful may have meant being mocked. Being angry may have meant being called dangerous. Being sad may have meant being inconvenient. Being clear may have meant being accused. Being separate may have meant being abandoned. So the body learned, do not take up too much space. Do not want too much. Do not know too much. Do not shine too much. Do not grieve too much. Do not need too much. Do not say too much. Do not be too much. But the truth is, you were never too much. You may have been too alive for a system that required your collapse. How compression forms. Identity compression forms in environments where the survivor's personhood is conditional. Love may be available when you are useful. Approval may come when you are compliant. Attention may arrive when your gifts serve the system. Safety may increase when you do not contradict the narrative. Peace may depend on your silence. Belonging may require you to become what others can tolerate. So the body learns to edit. At first, it may be small. Do not say that. Do not ask that. Do not laugh that loudly. Do not show disappointment. Do not need comfort. Do not correct the story. Do not name what happened. Do not look too happy. Do not look too sad. Do not look angry. Do not look like you know. Do not make them feel exposed. Do not make the room uncomfortable. Over time, the editing becomes automatic. The survivor no longer simply hides certain responses. She loses access to them. She may not feel anger until much later. She may not know she had a preference until after the decision is made. She may not realize she was uncomfortable until she is alone. She may not know she wanted to say no until her body collapses. She may not know she was sad until she is exhausted. She may not know she was harmed until her body begins telling the truth. This is because compression is not only behavioral, it becomes embodied. The body learns to hold back before the mind has words. The throat tightens before truth forms. The chest collapses before desire rises. The stomach drops before anger can protect. The shoulders round before the self takes space. The face arranges itself before the room can object. The voice softens before clarity can sound too strong. The nervous system says, become smaller before they see you. Become easier before they react. Become useful before they resent you. Become quiet before they accuse you. Become spiritual before they question your motives. Become what keeps the room intact. And the tragedy is that the survivor may be praised for this. You are so mature. You are so thoughtful. You are so selfless. You are so understanding. You are so wise. You are so easy. You are so helpful. You are such a good daughter, such a good son, such a good Christian, such a good friend, such a good listener, such a good support, such a good person. But inside the body, the cost may be enormous, because praise can become part of the cage when it rewards the disappearance of the self. Identity compression in family systems. In covert family systems, identity compression often happens through roles. The child is not allowed to be a whole person. The child becomes a function, the responsible one, the scapegoat, the golden child, the emotional support, the translator, the quiet one, the difficult one, the gifted one, the spiritual one, the one who carries, the one who knows, the one who absorbs, the one who keeps the family image intact. And once the role is assigned, the system may resist anything that contradicts it. If the quiet one becomes clear, the system may call it disrespect. If the helper says no, the system may call it selfishness. If the responsible one rests, the system may call it laziness. If the gifted one stops producing, the system may call it failure. If the scapegoat tells the truth, the system may call it bitterness. If the spiritual one names harm, the system may call it rebellion. If the daughter becomes separate, the system may call it dishonor. If the son stops performing loyalty, the system may call it betrayal. The role becomes more important to the system than the person. So the survivor learns, if I become more fully myself, the system will feel threatened. If I tell the truth, they may lose the version of me they prefer. If I have needs, the family story may crack. If I stop carrying, the whole structure may react. And for a child, that reaction can feel unbearable. So the child compresses, not because she is false, but because the system will not let her be whole. Identity compression in faith systems. In spiritual abuse, identity compression can become even more confusing because the shrinking may be framed as holiness. Die to self. Submit. Honor. Be humble. Do not lean on your own understanding. Forgive. Serve. Be teachable. Do not cause division. Do not be rebellious. Do not be proud. Do not trust your feelings. Do not make an idol of your pain. Do not put yourself first. Some of those words can be sacred in their proper place. But in harmful systems, sacred words can be used to compress the person God created. The survivor may be taught to distrust desire, distrust anger, distrust her body, distrust her perception, distrust her grief, distrust her no, distrust her clarity, distrust her intuition, distrust the very signals God may be using to tell the truth. And when that happens, the survivor may confuse self-erasure with surrender. But surrender to God is not the same as disappearance under control. Humility is not the hatred of the self. Holiness is not the absence of personhood. Forgiveness is not the collapse of boundaries. Honor is not agreement with a false image. Submission is not surrendering your God-given conscience to a system that benefits from your silence. Jesus does not ask you to become less real in order to belong to Him. He does not redeem you by flattening you. He does not sanctify you by erasing your essence. He does not call you by name only to remove everything that makes you recognizable. The false system says, become small enough to be tolerated. Jesus says, I have called you by name. The false system says, yourself is dangerous. Jesus says, yourself belongs to me. The false system says, disappear and call it holiness. Jesus says, come into truth and truth will set you free. When compression looks like peace, one of the hardest parts of identity compression is that it can look peaceful. A compressed survivor may not appear rebellious. She may appear calm. She may appear stable. She may appear agreeable. She may be kind. She may be articulate. She may be productive. She may be spiritually serious. She may be praised. She may be admired. She may be trusted. She may be the one others turn to. But inside, she may be living with the very little access to herself. She may not know how to locate desire. She may not know how to feel anger without fear. She may not know how to make a choice without scanning impact. She may not know how to rest without guilt. She may not know how to speak without self-editing. She may not know how to be seen without bracing. That is not peace. That is compression functioning well enough to be mistaken for maturity. And this matters for care providers, pastors, helpers, spouses, and friends. Do not assume that a compliant survivor is safe. Do not assume that a calm survivor is free. Do not assume that a highly articulate survivor has full access to herself. Do not assume that someone who can explain the system is no longer inside its effects. Sometimes the survivor can name the architecture before her body has stopped living under it. Sometimes she can map the captivity before her nervous system has found rest. Sometimes she can sound clear because clarity was part of how she survived. So care must learn to ask deeper questions. Not only can she explain what happened, but does she have access to desire? Can she feel no without terror? Can she rest without earning it? Can she be misunderstood without collapse? Can she experience joy without checking it? Can she feel separate without feeling annihilated? Can she belong to herself in the presence of another? These are identity questions, and they matter. The body signature of identity compression. Identity compression lives in the body. It may feel like a collapsed chest, a shallow breath, a tight throat, a frozen face, a soft voice that cannot find volume, a smile that arrives before consent, a body that makes itself physically small, a tendency to fold inward, shoulders that round, eyes that look down, hands that fidget or disappear, a stomach that tightens when asked what you want, a blankness when someone asks your preference, a rush of panic after saying something honest, a wave of guilt after enjoying something, a sense that being visible is dangerous. The body may not say, I have experienced identity compression. The body may say, I do not know. Whatever you want, it does not matter. I am fine. I am easy. I do not need anything. I am okay. I am not upset. I do not care. It is fine. And sometimes those words are not lies. They are survival phrases. They are the language of a body that learned wanting was dangerous. So healing may begin with very small things. Noticing what you like, noticing what you do not like, letting yourself have a preference, letting your body say no internally before you say it externally, letting yourself choose a color, a song, a food, a pace, a texture, a room, a rest, a rhythm. Letting yourself feel the smallest movement of desire without judging it. For some survivors, this can feel surprisingly hard because desire was not neutral. Preference had consequences. Need had consequences. Joy had consequences. Beauty had consequences. Gifts had consequences. Truth had consequences. But Jesus does not despise the small return of the self. He can bless the smallest preference. He can meet the first honest no. He can hold the first true yes. He can sit with the trembling that comes when you begin to become visible to yourself. The difference between adaptability and compression. This distinction matters. Adaptability can be healthy. Flexibility can be beautiful. Sensitivity can be a gift. Empathy can be holy. Service can be love, but compression is different. Adaptability says, I can adjust while still remaining myself. Compression says, I must disappear so the room can remain stable. Flexibility says, I can choose to bend without losing my shape. Compression says, I no longer know my shape. Empathy says, I can feel with another person. Compression says, I must become what another person needs. Service says, I offer from freedom. Compression says, I am only safe when I am useful. Humility says, I am not above others. Compression says, I must stay beneath others. Peace says, truth can be held without domination. Compression says, truth must be hidden to keep the system intact. So the question is not, am I flexible? Am I empathetic? Am I kind? Am I selfless? The deeper question is, do I still exist when I am loving? Do I still have access to myself when I am serving? Can I adjust without disappearing? Can I care without becoming a role? Can I be tender without being used? Can I be humble without being erased? Can I love without compressing? That is the work. Not becoming selfish, not becoming hard, not becoming indifferent, but becoming real. Connection to weeks 1 through 7. Identity compression connects to every teaching before it. Week 1 was surveillance fatigue. If you were watched long enough, you may have compressed the parts of you that drew attention. Week 2 was installed guilt. If guilt was installed deeply enough, you may have compressed desire, anger, and boundary. Week 3 was freeze. If your authentic response was interrupted often enough, you may have compressed spontaneity. Week 4 was post-conversation confusion. If conversations left your body unresolved, you may have compressed your own interpretation and deferred to the system's version of reality. Week 5 was hyper-responsibility. If you were made responsible for the room, you may have compressed your own needs so others could remain centered. Week 6 was emotional weather shifts. If you had to track the atmosphere, you may have compressed your own expression before the weather changed. Week 7 was the internal watcher. If surveillance moved inside, the watcher may have continued compressing you long after the room was gone. So week 8 asks, what did you have to become to survive all of that? What parts of you had to go quiet? What did your body learn not to show? What did your voice learn not to say? What did your face learn not to reveal? What did your heart learn not to want? What did your gifts learn to hide? What did your true self learn to place out of reach? These questions are tender. They should not be used as assignments. They are not a demand to recover everything at once. They are simply a way of beginning to notice the shape of what captivity compressed. Neurodivergence and identity compression. For neurodivergent survivors, especially ADHD, autistic, ADHD, HSP, empathic, gifted, INFP, INFJ, or highly sensitive survivors, identity compression can become especially layered. Because the natural self may have already been intense, perceptive, creative, sensory rich, justice oriented, emotionally attuned, pattern aware, and difficult for ordinary systems to understand. The survivor may have heard, "You are too sensitive, too dramatic, too intense, too distracted, too emotional, too particular, too deep, too honest, too much, too quiet, too loud, too smart, too strange, too passionate, too difficult, too needy, too independent, too dependent, too everything." So the survivor learns to mask, to translate, to soften, to explain, to apologize, to perform normal, to hide intensity, to make brilliance palatable, to make sensitivity useful, to make perception acceptable, to make discomfort invisible, to make distress quiet, to make herself legible to people who never learned her language. This is exhausting, and inside captivity, masking may not only be social, it may become survival. The survivor may mask fear, mask disgust, mask grief, mask sensory overload, mask anger, mask spiritual dissonance, mask the fact that she knows, mask the fact that something is wrong, mask the fact that the room does not feel safe, mask the fact that her body is collapsing. So when we talk about identity compression, we have to honor neurodivergent masking as a serious embodied cost. Not simply, I learned social skills, but I learned to hide the parts of me that might reveal the truth. And yet, the very wiring that was targeted may also have helped you survive. Deep pattern recognition, high empathy and attunement, somatic noticing, creative synthesis, meaning making, recursive self-awareness, language making, systems perception, relational and spiritual discernment. These may have helped you perceive the architecture. They may have helped you remain intact. They may have helped you map what others could not see. They may have helped you find language before the field had language. They may have helped you find the exit. Your wiring was not the problem. The captivity was the problem. The system that weaponized your wiring was the problem. The people who used your sensitivity as access were the problem. The environments that demanded your gifts while shaming your needs were the problem. Jesus does not need to erase your wiring in order to heal you. He restores the personhood that captivity compressed around it. What begins to return? When identity compression begins to loosen, you may not suddenly know everything about yourself. You may begin with small returns, a preference, a color, a song, a boundary, a laugh that feels like yours, a sentence that comes out before you shrink it, a no that does not immediately turn into an apology, a yes that becomes desire instead of obligation, a moment of rest without explaining, a tear you do not wipe away too quickly, a truth you let yourself know, a memory of what you loved before the system used it, a sense of your own body in the room, a feeling of, I am here. I am allowed to be here. I am not only here for what I provide. I am not only here to manage. I am not only here to carry. I am not only here to be useful. I am a person. This can feel unfamiliar. For those raised inside lifelong captivity, some of this may not feel like returning. It may feel like emerging for the first time, not becoming who you were before, but becoming who you were preserved to become. Jesus does not shame the slow return of the self. He does not demand immediate confidence. He does not rush the body into visibility. He can meet you in the smallest space where truth begins to rise. He can bless the first breath of personhood. He can hold the parts of you that tremble when they are no longer compressed. He can teach your body you are allowed to exist without being useful. You are allowed to be loved without being small. You are allowed to be holy without disappearing. You are allowed to be free without becoming unsafe. You are allowed to be seen by Jesus and not consumed. Spiritual physics of identity compression. Here is the spiritual physics of identity compression. The unsafe system says, become small enough to survive me. Jesus says, I have called you by name. The unsafe system says, your fullness is dangerous. Jesus says, your personhood is sacred. The unsafe system says, your role matters more than your life. Jesus says, your life matters more than the role. The unsafe system says, disappear and call it peace. Jesus says, "Come into truth and receive my peace." The unsafe system says, "Your desire is selfish." Jesus says, "Bring your desire into my presence." The unsafe system says, "Your anger is rebellion." Jesus says, "Your anger may be telling the truth about what violated love." The unsafe system says, "Your gifts belong to us." Jesus says, "Your gifts belong to the one who gave them." The unsafe system says, "Your self must be erased." Jesus says, "I redeem the self I created." The unsafe system says, "Your wiring is too much." Jesus says, "My God made your wiring for a purpose, on purpose, like this." The unsafe system says, "You are only safe when you are useful." Jesus says, "You are beloved before you produce anything." The unsafe system says, "We define you." Jesus says, "I call you by name." Scripture anchor. The scripture anchor for this teaching is Isaiah 43:1. "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." This is a tender word for the compressed survivor, because identity compression says you are not allowed to have a name apart from the role. You are the helper. You are the problem. You are the carrier. You are the peacekeeper. You are the gifted one. You are the difficult one. You are the responsible one. You are the spiritual one. You are the one who understands. You are the one who should know better. You are the one who should carry more. But Isaiah says, "I have called you by name, not by role, not by function, not by family narrative, not by diagnosis, not by wound, not by usefulness, not by the system's need, by name." And then, "You are mine." This is not ownership like captivity. This is belonging without consumption. This is being held without being used. This is being known without being monitored. This is being claimed by love, not controlled by a system. The survivor who has been compressed may need time to receive this. "Because you are mine" may sound frightening if belonging once meant possession. But when God says, "You are mine," He is not taking yourself away. He is rescuing it from every false claim. He is saying, "You do not belong to the role. You do not belong to the system. You do not belong to the false father image. You do not belong to the predator. You do not belong to the family story. You do not belong to the room that required your disappearance. You belong to me, and because you belong to me, Your true self is not lost. A gentle practice. If you want to practice noticing identity compression, you can do this very gently. You might ask, where do I become smaller automatically? Around whom do I lose access to myself? What parts of me feel safest when hidden? What preferences disappear when I am being watched? What do I say I do not care about when I actually do? What truth does my body know before I can speak it? What role do I become when I feel unsafe? What would I want if no one used my wanting against me? What would I say if I did not have to manage the room? What would my body do if it did not have to prove goodness? And then pause, not to force an answer, not to excavate everything, not to turn healing into another assignment, just to make room. Sometimes the first answer may be, I do not know. That is okay. I do not know can be an honest beginning. It may mean the self is not absent. It may mean the self is protected. It may mean desire needs safety before it can speak. So you can say, Jesus, meet me here, not with pressure, not with performance, not with force, but with tenderness. Show me the self you preserved. Help me notice what captivity compressed. Teach my body that it is safe to become real with you. Blessing for the compressed survivor. If your identity had to compress to survive, you may be met with mercy today. May you stop mistaking survival smallness for your true size. May you stop calling self-erasure holiness. May every role that consumed your personhood begin to loosen. May your body remember that you are more than what you carried. May your gifts return to their proper place. May your voice return without apology. May your desire return without shame. May your grief return without being corrected. May your anger return as protection, not destruction. May your joy return without being monitored. May your preferences return in tiny, holy ways. May your name become louder than your role. May Jesus separate your true self from the version captivity required. May the false claims lose their authority. May the compressed places begin to breathe. May your body learn that fullness is not danger. May your spirit learn that visibility with Jesus is not exposure. May your nervous system learn that being real is not rebellion. May you be called by name again, not as a return to what was accessible before, but as an emergence into what Jesus preserved. Today's closing. Identity compression may have helped you survive. It may have made you safer in unsafe rooms. It may have protected your gifts from being fully consumed. It may have kept your truth hidden until it could be spoken. It may have helped you remain intact under pressure. But compression was never meant to be your permanent shape. You were not created to become the smallest version of yourself that a harmful system could tolerate. You were not created to be only a role, only a function, only a helper, only a carrier, only a peacekeeper, only a witness, only a gift for others to use. You were created with a name, a body, a voice, a mind, a spirit, a story, a God-given essence that captivity could not erase. Jesus knows the self beneath the compression. He knows the gifts before they were weaponized. He knows the desire before it was shamed. He knows the voice before it was silenced. He knows the joy before it was monitored. He knows the body before it learned to collapse. And he says, "Fear not. I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." This is week 8 of understanding covert abuse through the body, identity compression, when your true self had to become smaller to survive. You are not empty. You are not lost. You are not too late. What captivity compressed, Jesus can begin to breathe open. Go gently. You are being called by name.